Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where we discover the communities that are making a difference in the lives of others. Our self-discovery is something we are all making on our life's journey. Here you will find the people that will be your guidance, that will be your inspiration, that will be there for you in support on your journey of life. Do enjoy. Our next show is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Ignite Your Heart and Soul right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest, originally from the UK, but now is in Arizona in the States, is the wonderful Margaret Rogers Van Coops. We're going to be stepping into the unknown today because she's going to be talking about her life, her journey into the unknown, her story, but also all the wonderful things that opened up to her in her life on so many topics. She was kind of bombed, literally bombs dropped across the road in World War II the day she was born. So she really made an entrance. She was here for a reason, and we're going to find out that reason today. She's written 14 metaphysical books, a novel, Henry Secrets, and now her own book, Journey in her own life. She's an ordained minister, a nurse, works with psychology and psychiatry, counseling, and variety of alternative therapies and maladies and serious illnesses, and the coronavirus with colloidal silver. We're going to be talking about that one because that was a good one. And there's going to be so much that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to keep quiet and introduce you to our darling Margaret. And welcome to the show, my dear.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you invited me.
Well, my pleasure, my pleasure. Always wonderful to have somebody who's had such a wonderful journey. You've really, I'm always saying to people, be willing to explore your life. Treat it as an adventure, step into the unknown and allow life to guide you where you're meant to go and what you're meant to become. And just looking at your bio, you seem to be that person. As I said, the bombs dropped when you came out. You're here, and you're here to make a difference. And with everything you've jam-packed in your life, I don't think stagnancy is any one of your problems, is it?
No, actually, I have to be honest. If you go back to all of us individually, we come in with a soul structure coding that is so deeply embellished. What's the word?
Embedded.
Embedded. In us. So we don't even know it's there, but we are acting upon it. So as a toddler, literally, my mother told me, I don't remember it, that I was walking around going up to all sorts of people, strangers, and giving them messages.
Right.
So it was just something that I just did,
It's because it was something you are.
Yeah. And the bottom line basically was that as I evolved as a medium, I had a lot of questions going on in my head. Why is this happening to a person? And of course, I was always hearing spirit guides. So I had my own personal teachers, unlike most people that have to find someone who's already trained in some way and then start learning with them, which I went on to do in Japan. But coming back to, the expression of life in England, we have to remember that there was rations and there wasn't a lot of stuff for us to eat or whatever. And I remember Mum brewing up a bag of tea, a tea bag or whatever they had in those days, probably had loose tea,
yes.
And boiling it and boiling it and boiling it, just to get some tiny bit of flavor out of the tea. And being told that I wasn't allowed to have it because it wasn't good for a child. It looked like water to me.
Yes, yeah. By that time it was, yeah. Yeah. Especially the way the British like their tea. I'm from England myself, and I always used to say, Mum, if the spoon stood up in the teacup, then it was fine. It was strong enough, And she used to say to me, because I'm not a tea drinker, I'm a coffee drinker, and she used to say to me that my tea looks like cat's pee.
Well, I'm still a bit like that. I like weak tea, and I still like tea rather than coffee. Yes.
No, I'm a coffee girl, most certainly. But it's funny that you say that right from the word go, you have this message, and I've had somewhat of a similar path, maybe not to the extent that you have, but growing up, I was a very sickly child, and I would play with dead people, and I couldn't understand why nobody else saw them. All right, and through school, I became teachers, counselors, and not because I knew what to tell them, but I was the conduit of the message they needed to hear. But I had no understanding at all of what I was doing. I was just doing it. Did you have any comprehension of what you were doing?
Well, as I said, until my father came back from the war, because he was a major, and of course, I don't want to be talking too much about what's in my book. I'm sure people would like to want to read it if they're interested. Uh, and my father was throat chakra, still working on those things.
Yes.
My father was a very demonstrative man. Our ancestry was royalty.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather on my mother's side used to go and play chess with the king, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I grew up with all of that, and I was told I'm a lady, even though I'm a child, and I have to behave like one. And since my mother was a cripple, I was taken off to his regimental reunions, and I just sat in people's laps and I watched their auras go from yucky, dark colors like navy blue, even in some cases, deep maroon, that kind of thing. And as I'm sitting there, I would be generating this energy, and then I'd watch them. They just sort of become all pearlesque all around here. And then I could jump down and I'd get a couple of coppers in those days, the big pennies,
Mm-hmm.
and put them in the machine that would go around with the cherries, and I'd get a couple more out. And then I'd run out and run along to play, and someone else would pick me up. So it was just a natural thing. It just happened. I didn't sit there thinking I'm going to make them better. So when
Right.
they honored me by the regiment, the Suffolk Regiment it was called, down in Chelsea in London, I had to stand and learn the British salute, not performing now, and with the generals and the brigadiers and all those people as they marched by and made me an honorary member. Now that was the seed that actually got me to say, hey, I've got something different here. I've got something
Yes.
special, And so I went on. I wanted to be a nurse, and in time I wanted psychology and psychiatry and all these different things that you could do in England with, by the way, in teaching hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
And you couldn't go to university and study this kind of
No.
thing.
No.
And we had Carl Jung and all these kind of things that you could read about, but that was a bit crazy too, jumping off stages into the great abyss, and one guy broke his leg.
Yeah.
I heard all those stories, and so I questioned, my spirit guides, and the one that was most closest to me in those days was called Sister Teresa. And I found out that she was actually excused habit because she had a bad throat. And eventually I found he was Saint Teresa, and the same with Red Cloud. I mean, I was 8 and I was in the Devil's Bowl I think it was in Sussex in those days, I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I was running down there and he was suddenly in my head and he taught me the gate of power so that I could jump down. And then when I got down there, he made me roll up in a circle and understand protection, from the dark side and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And so I had these many moments in my life where, my sister was 4.5 years younger. So I had time in that period before she became a nuisance. I had to be the big sister, take her everywhere. I had that time where I could listen to spirit guides and be taught a tremendous amount. And I guess in my own way as a child, it was stimulating me to ask even more
Right.
unusual, weird questions, And when I did ask questions, I got more than I bargained for sometimes.
Right. But you were very fortunate that you had parents that recognized the gift or didn't get in the way of it. My mum was very fey, but was I'm very much brought up in a family that was different. I was the odd one, the sky blue one here, and it wasn't something that one could talk about, or that anybody could talk about with me, because it just was not a topic whatsoever. And
Mm-hmm.
I was just really the weird one, and they kind of blamed it on my sickness. So you're very, very lucky that you actually, had people that recognized the gift that you had from very, very young.
But
Because
I'm sorry, I interrupt you a little bit there. I wanted to say they didn't see it as a gift. It was, um, in terms of healing in those times, it was just this child was special. They didn't say
right,
it was a gift or
no,
anything. I just wanted to correct that because, people, if they decided it's a gift from God, that put you on a higher
right,
pedestal. I
yes,
wasn't there.
yeah, no, but I mean, at least they knew you were special. Right? They knew you had something, you had an ability.
Mm,
And that, I think, is more and more what we're seeing today, is more and more children today have these abilities,
mm,
and we're recognizing it, and we're nurturing it, and we're guiding it. But
mm.
our generation, it was kind of a taboo subject. And as you said, where did you go? Where do you go when you have that gift to talk to anyone who can guide you on it? Because it just wasn't around, or wasn't
Yeah.
spoken of back then.
Well, and also I took a very big, deep breath and a very brave step when I wrote my journey into the oneness, because I had to include my alien encounters. I
Mm-hmm.
had many.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically had them also teaching me.
Yes.
So my telepathy, more throat chakra I'm working with.
The
I'm really,
reluctance to
I'm
tell.
really, I'm really, really digging into my psyche in terms of my history as a child lately with the oneness, because I'm trying to leave that behind in a way, even though
Mm-hmm.
people want to know about it. I'm more wanting to teach and help these young children, as you say, to go on with it and leave
But if
them.
they know you had it from a child, there's the relatability. You
Yes,
understand what they're going through. So that
exactly.
opens that door. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah. So the aliens taught me a great deal. They test you, it's
Mm-hmm.
not, people think they're violent and aggressive, but the greys are not anyway that I was working with. It's all in the mind, it's all telepathy.
Mm-hmm.
And as reading the book, for example, one incident was where they knew I was afraid of spiders. So they put me in a room full of spiders from tiny to enormous, bigger than my hand. And I'm screaming away. And then suddenly it's a white room. And of course, over time, I learned their language. I can speak it. It's not um, anything like ours. You
Mm-hmm.
can't, like if I speak French, I have to think English into French and
Right.
French back into English, that kind of thing, which is not so good these days. But with the alien, it's all guttural and it's all
Mm.
clicks and ticks. I don't know if
Yes.
you've ever heard it, yeah.
Yes.
And so I can
Galactic type
speak
speak.
it,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I can speak it, and then afterwards, people say, "Well, what did you say?" No, I don't interpret it. I'm just able to know in our words what I just said and make it according to what we say. But the aliens don't have the emotional descriptions that we have.
Mm-hmm.
It's more factual.
Yeah.
So I had that going on as well. So my telepathy evolved in with my psychic ability, and the two were paramount to one another, supporting one another without me realizing it
Mm-hmm.
as I grew up. And it didn't really hit me until I actually clinically died, when I was given these silly tranquilizers that were actually heroin based. Nobody told me. And I wonder why I was doolally and I couldn't remember.
Wow.
And I had Parkinson's disease, which was diagnosed when I was 37 because my father had it. My grandmother was like Muhammad Ali, and her father, who I never met, of course, but I was told that had it as well. It was not called Parkinson's then, but it's a gene factor. But what I went on to learn, and I will just share this, that MS, PD, Alzheimer's, all these different kinds of things that we're dealing with now are as a result of an imbalance in the soul structure coding
Mm-hmm.
that comes into the DNA, which comes in added to the RNA of the experiences we have in this life, amounts to an imbalance in such a way that the brain and the nervous system can't cope. So I
Right.
had a breakdown and
Yes.
died. And then they
Yes.
brought me back. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was probably resetting you. You
Oh,
dying, coming back,
absolutely.
resetting you back into the right groove. And I talk a great deal about balance, you know, and how dis-ease, anxiety, stress, depression, anger causes disease, which is manifests in diseases,
Mm,
and it's all that imbalance, isn't it? And sometimes it's the imbalance that we bring about in our daily lives, in this life, but
mm.
very often it can be either the DNA of our ancestral or past lives that we bring
Yes,
in with us.
exactly. I agree with you. When I looked at my own DNA and go back, 1066, it was a long way on my father's side. And then when my mother, she didn't really bother about all that, but somebody apparently banged on her door when she was a child and offered for her father to do a DNA search. And they went back to the clans in Scotland,
Mm,
and
hmm.
I don't know how they find out all that stuff, but anyway. But my mother also had a father who was adopted, so there was some Japanese in
Mm,
my family, and my sister has the features I don't. So genetically, we take on
yes.
these ancestors, and subliminally, we don't realize we're following in the direction of the pathway that they've set up for us to continue.
Hmm.
So I wrote about that in one of my books. But the one I really want to tell people about is please read Donald Trump, The Enigma of Society, because it's not about his politics or anything.
Right.
It's about showing how the ancestors of him actually walked their journeys, leading to his grandfather coming to America and becoming a citizen, but not really being happy here and going back to Germany to try and be German again, only to find they rejected him, which allowed for Donald to arrive and be an American. So
Aha.
without that to do, that's just a simple one.
Right.
And it was so interesting, when I got the names of the ancestors, I didn't know their lives, and Spirit
Mm,
was giving me their stories of
mm,
their lives. So you can read about, how that situation evolved for us to be with Donald, who is doing exactly what he was supposed to be
right.
doing.
And actually, when you think, his wives, or his European, he has that tendency to go for that. So
Mm,
we can't really run away from our ancestral DNA. It's a thread that is within us. I had an uncle who did my mother's side of the family, and they went back 500 years to when they started keeping records. They
mhm,
kept records in the churches of births and deaths and marriages and things like that. And we were the Standerly family, going right back. And the interesting thing is that everybody was either an administrator, lawyer, judges, or writers. And that was along the thread. My brother is a writer. My mother was an actress and a writer. And so and my tongue is my writing, not my hand, But it's interesting how you can't escape that thread. I really want to do my father's side because I know he goes definitely very much to the Vikings. But we are very much part of our DNA, and we are here kind of like pre-programmed to do something, to accomplish something, to step into our instrument and find our own orchestra. But we fight against that, don't we? And we have such a problem all the time, fighting against what we're really here to do because of society's expectation that's imposed upon us.
I agree with you. And, I mean, just like in this last week, just to give an example, I'm writing The Light Side, which is a twin to The Dark Side that I wrote before my husband passed. And the whole thing about writing this is I need time. I can do a book in 4 or 5 days if I'm left for 12 hours a day. I just keep on writing. That's the way they give it to me.
Yeah.
Every day I've got up and I'm going to do A, B, and C, and then the phone goes,
Yeah.
something wants this, or I have to go somewhere and I have to change something online. And it's like, what happened to the days when I could walk out in the sunshine
Mm.
and finish by 5 and just mosey through whatever I wanted, and I must admit I'm very tempted with television.
Yes, I actually find it's my escape.
Yes.
It's a way of switching off. I tune into that, and that's my way of shutting down.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just continue on. Everything keeps on coming. So
Mm,
it's a channeling in a different direction. Yes, but yeah, we're inclined not to make time, and this is, I think, one of the problems with humanity now is that we are so busy and we're so static, and we've got so much going on all the time that we don't understand the gift of silence, of being still, of just simply allowing a moment to happen instead of dictating it to happen,
mm,
because that's where the answers are, aren't they? They're always
yeah.
channeled to us one way or the other, but we've got to be
Mm.
still enough and quiet enough to listen.
Well, I think that too is it for me, and because I've lived with this for so long, I
Mhm.
tend to teach my students you can have the garbage going on the same time as receiving the information,
Yes.
and you have to learn to entwine it because sometimes your garbage is actually a clue to what the spirit guide wants to tell you,
Yeah,
so that you could sort it all out, as it were,
and
and be
make sense of it.
free.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Mm,
kind of a reference. Yes. Um, I call it the knowingness. I know you must have your own name for it, but for me, it's always was the knowingness. And it was like, given to the soul, the information that resonates with the heart and truth, given to the spirit, put into action, and the mind will know what the mind needs to know when the mind needs to know it. And anytime I've had a message or I have to do anything or anything I do comes from that knowingness, just allowing. And it's kind of a little mixture of knowledge that I've acquired through my life, but a great deal of knowingness of how to use the knowledge.
mm.
How do you interpret that knowingness?
Well, I've never even been asked a question like that to think of it that way, to be honest. I've never thought of it as knowing the oneness so much as, yeah, just embrace it and use it. It's
Mm,
like, if I have some vegetables and I want to make a salad, I don't think, well, I have to put the carrots in first
mhm,
and then the lettuce. I just chop it all up and there it is. Well,
mhm,
in the same way as I've grown and evolved, it's just happening, 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 and pieces fit together and more pieces fit together. And teaching in Japan was fantastic for me because when I first went there in '86, you saw everybody in katans and kimonos all the time. They were very restricted. They were like, frightened mouse, and yet they wanted to know. And so I was teaching beginner psychic development, and that evolved over 20 years for me to be able to do courses where I've now trained hundreds of people in various therapies, as well as ultimate, some of them to metaphysiotherapists. Now, the point is today, when you go there, if you do see a kimono or a katan,
mhm.
you're like, huh?
Yeah.
And then you realize they work in a hotel or something because
Yes.
nobody is dressing up the way they were.
Mhm.
And on top of that, where they were all sort of inhibited, like I'd say, open the door, and they'd look at me like, what you want the door open for? And they're looking around trying to find out reason why, and eventually open it. Now it's like they're highly physical. They'll run over there, open the door, and they look at me and say, I did it, now what? And when they used to greet me, it was all bowing like
Mhm.
this, and in fact, the first time I met someone doing the bowing when I was first there, I eventually bowed about 20 times. And I said, "What's he going to stop under my breath like this?" And she said, "Well, you stop." So I had to learn their culture, obviously,
Yes.
and fit in. And I had a great interpreter, still to do today, and we still do counseling for them online. And the basic thing is that all my students who qualified as metaphysiotherapists and metaphysicians had to do many, many different courses of 5 levels. And in the process, when I passed them, they did written exams, the whole thing really properly. I want to do that for Americans.
Mhm.
There isn't anything. There's the odd people who have centers and schools where they focus on psychic development, but they don't bring all of the therapists together and train them. And that's what I want to do with people like yourself
Mhm.
who have all skills. I don't want to be the one who teaches everything like I did
Right.
in Japan,
Right.
but we need a university of
Yes.
metaphysical studies. It's time. These children that you mentioned who are born
Mhm.
with extra DNA strands, and we've got 3 coming in now, 3 extra DNA strands.
Mhm.
These ones will speak many languages as they get older, and they will be scriptures of different things or records of different things. There's so much I haven't written yet, but uh, the bottom line is we need this University of Metaphysical Studies, and every doctor, counselor, whatever, they should be in the rules of the game of education, have to at least do 1 year of introductory courses of all there is in metaphysical studies, from mind to body to spirit to health and so on. So that, those that go into leading us really know what they're leading about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're really looking at so much that is either completely obsolete or absolutely needs to be overhauled. And when you look at America right now, I'm always given sayings, and a saying I was given about 2.5, 3 years ago was the universe is going to shake us up, to wake us up, for us to step up and change it up. And most certainly this year, we're being shaken up
Mm.
and woken up. We're at that, what I believe, the invite to step up right now. We're not quite in the change it up yet. That change is going to happen as people step up and realize that we need to be working on a different frequency. We need to be working on a different platform altogether. And
Well,
with that
can I
change,
can I just interject
Mhm.
one little sentence? We are already changed up. We just don't know it yet.
Right,
We don't
yes,
know how to use it.
that's the point. And that's the people that are already there that know what change is needed. They're the conductors. As each person discovers their step up, their instrument, there's the orchestra and the conductors to help them how to use that instrument. So, but I think for the masses right now, it's the step up stage. The people are already got the change up are ready now. The teacher will be there when the student is ready, and I think that's where we're at right now. It's very exciting times to see this, and because out of Haglas disruption, we see order, but order is never meant to be perfect order, because chaos is creativity. So they work
Mm,
hand in hand with each other, don't they? But we're in
yes.
the extreme right now.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. I mean, obviously you're in the same vibe as me, and there are people out there who are probably watching us and going, "Oh gosh, I don't know anything." But we do have to say, you do know. It's just
Mhm.
that your conscious mind has said, I'm going into a school process here.
Yeah.
Here we are, kindergarten, and teachers saying, you cannot do this way. You have to do it this way.
Mm.
And so we grow up with a foundation of beliefs that we have to do what society in
Yes.
general wants us to do,
Yes.
which is against the grain of our soul coding that
Mhm.
says, no, there's another way. So most of us don't really transform our mind and our heart and the way we do things until we have a crisis in the 40s.
The
And
cosmic two by
you know,
four.
and then what happens is everyone starts going, oh, my kids are left home and I don't
Mm,
like this job and I want
mm.
to do something else. And that's when they come and they basically ask me, what shall I do? And I always help them to dig inwardly to
Yes.
find their own knowing of what they should do, because I can't, if I tell them you should be an actress, for example,
Hmm.
even if I see them as famous one day, as I did with I'm blowing trumpets here, but medicine woman, what's her name? A British girl. Uh,
Suzanne,
no, no.
what?
It'll come when I can't think of it. I'm sorry.
Yes, yes. She has one
Um,
dark eye, one blue eye. If you know who it is, let us know.
yeah. Well, anyway, Jane
Seymour.
Seymour, that's right.
There we
She
go.
came to me when she was 16 or 17. I was doing a mind, body, and spirit event. And she asked me about her career. And the one and only thing I said to her that was important was never cut your hair.
Hmm.
She was modeling.
Right.
And I said, and any opportunity that comes to you in the world of videos, and all these things were starting then,
Hmm.
videos and movies, have a go. Look how famous she became. You
Yes,
know, she used to
yes,
come and see me quite a bit for
yeah.
advice. Lulu is another one. Yeah, she was great.
Oh,
She loved to
yes.
sit. She loved to sit under my pyramid. I had a copper pyramid. Everybody liked to use. You know, I was always a pioneer in that I
Mm,
had equipment that. You know, with my crystals, for example, the therapies were unfolding in those days, but I was all, you know, I'd been holding them on people's heads for years, you know, since I was about 7. I just picked them up off pathways or whatever I did. And today, now, I'm working with a company that is putting the pterogram therapy, which is about your chakras,
mm-hmm,
healing those, and the crystal acupuncture, which is about healing your entire your mind, body, and spirit, and
mm-hmm.
physical in every sense, into a package with hypnosis that I will record so that people can then treat themselves and then listen and transform their energy. And I don't have to bother about finding the stones anymore because they'll
Right.
be packaging them. This is amazing for me. This
Yes.
is, you know, 45 years of work with crystals in the public eye finally being accepted for these generations that are to come, who kids love the crystals. They
Oh,
love
yeah.
them.
Yeah, and it's not just kids, you know, it's anybody that I say is awakening. You know,
Mm,
they're beginning to understand, you know, crystal therapy, understand the importance of the alignment of your chakra. I even did a wonderful show with someone is the foods that you crave will match the color of your chakras. And if you're craving a certain color food, that means that chakra needs to be fed. So, you know, there's all sorts of things out there now. And it just, whichever way you want to navigate, it doesn't matter as long as you're willing to be open. Don't just
mm,
get stuck in one, you know, have it lead you to something else, because that's the orchestra. That's just one instrument there. And there is an orchestra, right? You know, you may not play all the instruments, but at least listen to them, because
yeah,
there'll be certain instruments that will definitely resonate with you. This is where I think we need to be willing to explore. You know,
okay.
we've,
Yeah.
we've, we know that growing up, it was the expectation, right? And the dictation, never for you, because you know you came out with an agenda, and that agenda was
Well,
very
I
obvious as a child.
actually, yeah, but it wasn't easy. It was very, very difficult because the timing of that period was all about appearances and
Yeah.
performance
Hmm.
production. And so anything, like, for example, I was in my art class. I loved art. I was always
Mm.
painting and drawing when I was a child. And I'm doing this. We're told to paint a central figure scene, and I've got these people on the beach and all sitting in a circle enjoying themselves. And I'm etching and sketching with paint and Indian ink, whitewash, and things like that. And this teacher comes along, dips her brush into my water, gets some black, and then does this black, thick black line all the way down the back of one of my people, and then a bit on the other side. I've still got that to this day. And I just wanted to scream at her,
Mm.
you know, because she had destroyed everything that was going on in my
Right.
head. And even today, if I get it out and look at it once in a while, I'll go, oh, you
Yeah.
know, because that was the way of the time. People
Hmm.
put you down, you know, even if you did something good. And years later, my mother went back to the school because she was an old girl at the same school, you know how it was then.
Hmm.
And the bottom line was that that teacher actually told her that I was an amazing student. And when I went back from nursing to pick up all my artwork, they were all hung up all over the school. And I'd insisted on taking them down. And here today, I still have them in the closet. I should have
You should just,
donated.
you should have just left them there as an inspiration. Yes,
Yeah.
I was fortunate to have an art teacher that I would very often just take either charcoal or pencil and just close my eyes and let patterns form. And I did a scene one time of the circus, but it's the elephant on the tightrope. Everything kind of changed around and blurring and everything else. And they loved the way I thought, because at that time it was different. You know, it was the
Mm,
early
mm,
70s, psychedelic. I wasn't on drugs, but it was that scene where, you know, we were exploring more. And I was fortunate to have an art teacher that didn't want the norm from me. Just let me go and be whatever I was doing, what I was inspired to do.
mm,
I grew up with a great deal of what I call restriction, because I wasn't quote normal. I didn't fit into the mold. As I said, a very sickly child growing up, missed a great deal of schooling. So I exempted myself from school at 16 and just went on my way, and had life experience and just went on my way completely. You talked about being taught how to protect yourself, right? I actually went down a road where I opened up way too much without protection and ended up with some little body possession, which was kind of quite scary. I assume you've never been through that, but have you seen that?
Oh, loads of it. You can't. This part of what I wrote in the dark side. I hope people will be interested in reading. We all have the dark side
Mm-hmm.
within us, and we tend to, when we hear that, we tend to think of the dark side as evil or bad, but actually, it's the good meat of our experiences that we make mistakes in
Mm-hmm.
that actually evolves us towards the special stuff, if you like, whatever you want to name it, of the light.
Mm-hmm.
But we are dark and light. If you
Mm-hmm.
think about inside your body, you have no light in there
Right.
other than explosions of biochemical performances of your systems working. And so there is light inside you, but
Mm-hmm.
you're not aware of it. So
Right.
in the same way, when we have earthbounds around, and of
Mm-hmm.
course there were thousands of them, uh, during the war being
Right.
killed, whether they're on the front line in another country or, in England through bombing of the night. So I was seeing all these
Mm-hmm.
people like wrapped up in bandages and money and blood and like this
Yeah.
scared, and but given time, uh, after the war ended and we're doing the healing work, I started to see these vortices of energy. It would start like a white shimmering light in a corner somewhere like this, and then it would open up and expand, and it would be like a tunnel, a vortex, but I didn't know that word then.
Ed.
And then I would watch these people farming through, one year on either Easter or one of these holiday times, spiritual time, there were thousands just going through my bedroom through this portal. And I just sat there all night watching it, literally
Mm.
all night. I was in a sort of trancey state, and it was a weekend. I remember that because I slept all day the next day. um, and, you know, that for me was an experience beyond any experience. It brought home to me just how many people had died during the war. And
Yeah.
obviously, I was only seeing hundreds, but
Right.
magnify that to the millions
Mm-hmm.
who were alive on the planet. And now we've got billions,
Yes.
you know, uh, we're looking at countries, that are still fighting, still at war. And so I'm writing in the light side, the book that I'm talking about is the Aquarian age that we're actually in now,
Mm-hmm.
and how we have to uh, understand that the consciousness of war is evolved over the Piscean age of survival into any way that we can keep and own and hold on to whatever it is we need. Whereas with the Aquarian age, this is about under Haniel's vibration, Archangel Haniel, of communication, which is
Yeah.
listen.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say something till you've heard something that
Right.
stimulates you to have a response. And when you have that response, have you done research? Do you
Mm-hmm.
know what you're talking about? We've had too many people in the Piscean age who talk, in quotes, my little word, rubbish.
Plenty of that. Plenty of that have been going on. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure you've been exposed to it lots of times. You just sit there going, okay, okay, because you know that they don't know anything about what they think they know about.
But also I found it very much an era of the drama. I call it the CNN effect, where they'll take a pimple and make it into a volcanic eruption. And, it's all fear driven. And why they keep you in fear is to keep you in control, right? So they
Right.
can dictate with the masses. And the inspiration that we wish to hear now is an invitation for us to step up and desire to know more. not the knowledge they're giving us, but what is the truth coming from the inside out. And when we're asking, we want to step up and be a part of the solution. You can't be part of the solution until you've done the inside job and become the instrument you're meant to be.
Right, exactly. One of the things that I always thought about as I was growing, because I always had this idea of a school, even when I was in school as a kindergarten kid, I knew I was going to have a school one day, so I've always evolved with it, to the example I gave earlier. But the thing that I grew up with in the school that I went to was Lady Margaret Grammar School, which is still today the school in London to go to. Where the education had a high standard and you had to do all the exams and so on and so forth. And I have to be honest and tell you that every one of my teachers, especially my English teacher, would do these horrible big S's across every spelling and everything I'd done and tell me to my face over and over again, I will never be a writer. I was dyslexic.
Me too. Me too.
I didn't even know what that was.
I didn't know until I was 21.
Well, I was younger than you because I'm older than you. But I found out about it when my first son, was about 4. And if he was in the front of the class, because he went to school 4.5 over there.
Yeah.
If they're in front of the class, he would behave himself. The minute he was at the back, because they'd move them around for social balance, what would happen was he would play up. Well, that went on for several years, and teachers were like, oh, I don't know what to do with him. And then one day I saw a program on BBC about dyslexia, and they were talking about the actor Oliver something, who was in
Stone?
Oliver, I can't remember.
So Oliver Stone.
But in
or not? No, that's Laurence Olivier. No,
no. This was the actor that was in not My Fair Lady. Oh dear. In this time, one thing's done. No.
I'm drawing blank.
Okay. But anyway, I sing, so I used to do all these songs and shows and things. And he was dyslexic. And I learned that he had to have someone read the lines to him because he couldn't even read, because they taught him as a child that he would never read.
Right. Yes.
But now we know today that the brain doesn't even read those spelled words. As long as you got the first letter and the last letter.
Yes.
Your brain knows what it is.
Yeah, those little things they put up on Facebook. Can you read this backwards or upside down? Or can you pick out the words for that?
Yes.
I can. It's easy for me to do that. But I actually only really started kind of writing when I got a computer, because I could cut and paste or correct what I was going wrong. But writing it in hand, my handwriting was terrible for a start, and I would get so frustrated with it not being in the right order because it wasn't coming out in the right way. And I didn't know I had dyslexia until I was 21. At school I was just the slow kid because I missed so much schooling through sickness. It was just the slow kid, but again, I was the quote fortune teller, the seer. And I would have teachers along with the students coming to me for reading. So,
that's a big change. You wouldn't have had that in my period of time.
Right. No, well, this was actually when I was out in South Africa. I went over there when I was 14. And basically, I got exempt from doing the Afrikaans class because I came there too late. And I would do art or do music or do something else. And they just, maybe because they were music and they were art, they were more open. But they saw something in me and knew that conversations with me would result in being answers for them. And I had no idea that was what I was doing. That's what I always did. I had no comprehension of how I knew. How do you know that? I have no idea. I just know. That's it. Can you repeat that? No. It's channeled once, that's it. And I didn't know anything about any of that. I just did. And I knew I was up against the tidal wave, but at the same time, I was really heavy into my spirituality at that time and being that spirit. And it was more later on in life that it kind of got suppressed. and not bogged down there for a while. So I went into the darkness with no light, knew there was a light over there, couldn't get to it. Took me about 8 years to come back out. And then coming back out, I was too bright in the light and felt the shadows chasing me. Now I love the darkness because I am the light in the darkness. But it is a process that you have to allow yourself to go through, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And of course, you know, when we're born, it's like we have amnesia, and every so often we get bumped on the head, and it's like, oh, I didn't know I know that, but
Yes.
I not only know that, but I know much more about that.
Yeah, yes. And it's just like, you know, then the human side of us comes in and second guesses. You know, well, how do I know that? You know, I don't have the PhD, the LDD, the BBB, the blah, 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 all the way at the bottom of my name. So how do I know this? How can you verify? You know, you get that. And I always say that, you know, I'm a spiritual counselor by God's design.
Well, for me, I just had to ask Spirit, and they sat with me and told me. So
yeah,
I have a running conversation in my head all the time when they're around, you know, which is most of the time. And I've got to a point now where it sounds bizarre, but there's probably about 50 spirits who live in my body with me.
Yeah, yes.
And as I wrote in the original book that I wrote for Germany, which was very dry, I called it The Way to Oneness. They published it under the name in German, Reisen and Bekannten Welten, which is Rise into an Unknown World, Go into an Unknown World, or Journey into an Unknown World, which I took and republished my book. So it's now called Journey into Oneness, A Way to Oneness Revisited. But the point of my mentioning all of this is that it explains everything that everyone asks questions about. It's a life book. You can read it all the way through, but you want to go back time and time again. And it's full of meditations and things to do. And the thing was that in that period when I wrote that, I just arrived in States and was still a Brit, but you know, now I'm an American. But
yeah, always a Brit, love. I've been here 40 years in Canada. I'm still a Brit to people.
Well, you know, we're a Brit over there, but I mean, here, you know, I'm American, and my language is adapted to the way I used to speak. But coming back to the book, you know, the thing that got me while I was writing that book was that, because I was writing it longhand on my lap in bed, you know. And the thing that got me about it was that it taught me as I was writing it, unlike all the books that followed where I was just new, you know, and just was writing together. This was, I was learning as I was writing.
Right. You were participating rather than
channeling. I was a student.
Yes.
I was channeling, but I was also conscious of, you know, all the way through that. And I think, you know, having such a luxury of being given the complete understanding of God and all forms and all that is, and the fragmentation of the universe and everything that I write about now, was in those days like, what?
Yeah, I know.
We're fragments.
It's still that in some ways, and you know, today. But I think it's just so much more. I think people are more hungry for it now. You know, I don't know about you, but since 2012, I've been saying that they're turning the volume up on us. You know, our frequency is rising bit by bit into that consciousness, into that understanding, stepping away from that three-dimensional earthbound feeling, you know, lightening up and understanding there is more and being open to receiving it. And I'm finding right now people are hungry for it. And, you know, on my shows, you know, I've got 18 different genres and we talk about lots of different things, but it's always about, are you living from the inside out? Because this outside facade, at some point you have to let go. It's not serving you. And you have to go inside, because that's really where your truth is, and understand what it is you're here to do. and step out into the world again with your instrument, with your knowledge, and explore the journey of life and what your part is in it. And I find people are very much more hungry for it now and trying to understand their meaningful purpose here in the world, their service in the world, and to also know that this isn't it. Because if you look at humanity at its worst, who wants to be here? But when we start looking at humanity at its best, and that humanity at its best is working cohesively with our divine presence, we really see we're so much more than we've given ourselves credit to be.
And also, you know, the thing about I'm going to bring up the virus.
Please, yes.
You know, when
Quarter of silver, yes.
I've been writing, I have 4 parts that I have put on LinkedIn as my article or blogs, whatever you want to call them, about the virus itself. And because of my anatomy and physiology training and so on, I know about enzymes and all these different things. So when I started to ask Spirit about this whole thing, which they now call COVID-19, what is it, 19? It's still to me the coronavirus.
Virus, yeah.
People were saying, oh, you know, that someone's manipulated a virus that exists and they've done it to kill us all off. And I'm listening to Spirit, and this virus is actually an ancient virus that was brought here by aliens. And the whole point of it was to kill bacteria of their types, and also to balance the ecological status of the planet at that time. And this is not the first time it's been awakened. About 5,000 years ago, it was awakened when the poles melted before. And then we go back in history, and times before that, it's also been awakened. So, you know, it's not new to us in a sense, but in terms of our DNA and our life and everything that we've done, it is very similar to us. The DNA structure in the nucleus, and we all have cells with nucleus, and we all humans don't have all 20 of the I can't think of the words here right now. I'm not meant to, I suppose, teach and preach, but
no, please teach and preach. Permission for let them just out.
So this virus has all 20 acidic, you know, acid in the I can't think of the word.
Alkaline and acid,
alkaline, or that within the DNA of its being. So only, you know, humans have XY. I just can't find the word. I'm sorry. Since my husband's died, I still lose words, and that's also dyslexia as well.
Yeah.
And so what I was learning, what Spirit was showing me, is, you know, we have XY
chromosomes.
That's the word I wanted. Thank you. And this bacteria has an existence in the XY of its own being to keep procreating its own being. The rest of the gene factors within the proteins of its DNA is to constantly shift and change its performance so that it will survive. And the little red blobs that you see all the way around are actually little nodules, and those nodules have multiple functions. They can reproduce, and they can even break off and survive and become an extra virus on their own state. They can absorb proteins from any bacteria. In our body, the protein will absorb. We have a protein that's like a jelly that kind of changes its form, and it just surrounds itself over the negative virus and bacteria that we don't like, and absorbs them. Well, this coronavirus can absorb that, so we have no defenses to stop us being infected. Now, its whole point of survival is to keep procreating itself. So it's not only sending energy from outside drawn in through these nodules, but the nodules are also uh, able to send down through infinitely small canals to the main nucleus and feed it. And then pass it on out to another one on the other side. So it can constantly feed itself, as it were, to keep itself alive. And if it loses a nodule in it, that falls off to become another virus, it will adapt to whatever it's going to do. So this is when we say we all know psychically that there is going to be another wave. It's not going to be taking out the people who have bad hearts, bad lungs, and bad kidneys, who are basically diabetics. This time, when it arises again, it's going to attack the alimentary tract. And so the symptoms would be like a diarrhea, and the lymphatic system will be fighting, because that's its job, fighting it. And so that's going to tear down the lymphatic system. So I'm more concerned about that, because everybody needs their lymphatic system, and everybody, needs the body to work and function. So colloidal silver, I've done a lot of research on that. There was a gentleman who wrote a book years ago about it. They were doing research to give it to people in countries like Africa, where malaria and tsetse fly and all these things. It's how long ago I was learning about colloidal silver and how it's made in vast vats with silver and electrolysis. And now you can buy it today in herbal stores. And you can buy the spray and you can buy the drops. Now, if you know that you've got an alimentary tract or digestive system that's not working, then you need to take a drop or a pipette, whatever country you live in, whatever you call it, of the colloidal silver liquid and drop it into, here's this very important underlying, distilled water. Because distilled water has no oxygen in it, in the way that CO2 water made us on. So it doesn't destroy the silver. If you put colloidal silver into regular water, even bottled water, it's no longer active. So it must be distilled water.
Can you distill your water by boiling it?
No, you have to buy it off the counter in the stores, because they do it in large quantities.
Right.
Now, distilled water, what I did anyway to get rid of my irritable bowel syndrome years ago, was to put 6 to 8 ounces of water by my bed with a full pipette of colloidal silver liquid in there. Put a little lid on top to stop the dust going in. And then in the morning at 6 o'clock, I would wake up, potty or something, and drink it. Then I'd go back to bed and wait till 8 o'clock when I would get up. Now I would go to eat my food, and I would have probiotics and the enzymes that one needs to break down the food in capsules, and take those with my food. Why? Because the colloidal silver kills your probiotics, it kills your yeast, it kills off all the enzymes, it kills off worms. People have worms,
Yes, they do.
It kills yeast from the beer and cakes and breads.
Bread and all that.
So in other words, it kills off everything that is going on inside your body. So you must put these back. Now, if you have chronic irritable bowel syndrome, or you have chronic digestive problems with your pancreas and liver because of diabetes and so on, you've got to do this for at least 3 weeks every morning. Now, at the same time, you've got to stop. You don't want to put much more than 1 slice of bread a day, or hardly any sugar. Go for stevia instead, which is really nice. I recommend Kale brand, Kale, because it doesn't taste licoricey. But there are many brands on the market. And so you cook your own food. Don't
Mhm.
eat out. Don't buy,
Processed food.
frozen food,
Yeah.
processed food, canned food. Cook natural, raw, and cook quickly. So, for example, if I put a piece of cod, because English like fish, into a pan with, say, a few asparagus spears and a little bit of salt and pepper and the herbs, and let them cook in their own moisture for 5-10 minutes, you got a yummy meal, and it
Mhm.
hasn't taken all day to prepare.
Right.
you know and if you want to have things like I love spaghetti bolognese, again, make it from scratch.
Right. Yes.
Whatever you need. We have shepherd's pie and things like that in
Mhm.
England. Americans don't understand these kinds of things, so they go for this chunk of meat.
Yeah.
Who needs this much meat?
Right.
When I first came here, I looked at that and I said, that's enough for the whole six of us,
Yes.
because we used to cut it thinly sliced. But Americans have to learn to eat less. They're eating too much. We
Yes.
only need 2 meals a day and snacks in
Right.
between.
Yeah, I agree. And um, I'm I'm probably about 90% vegan, and that 20% is like fish and chicken now and again, and cream cheese, which I'm still
Hmm.
liking. Otherwise, I'm more or less a vegan by choice. You can take my meat and fish, but don't touch my veggies. I love my veggies. I've got about at least 6 veggies a day, which I
Ah,
absolutely love, and find that my digestive system loves better as well. And I agree, not only do we need to cut down the meat, but we also need to actually understand that if an animal is dying in terror, you're eating the terror that that animal died in.
yes,
So there's look to where your meat is coming from, and there is no way we need to have mass manufacturing of cows and pigs and chickens and everything
yes.
else. So it's not organic or holistic in any way. So there's a lot there. I think changing the diet actually changes the chemistry in your body, which changes the way you look at things, your thoughts and everything else. So if
Mm,
we are seeking a journey of enlightenment, it's not just reading books and meditating and going home heart. You have to look at your lifestyle and how you're going to change it completely, because you can't just change one part of it and then opulence on the other side.
mm. I have to admit, though, that for me with food, I've experimented with being vegan and this and that over time. And I only weigh now, after my husband's death, because I lost a lot of weight with all that, but I only weigh 124 pounds. So um, I can't afford to lose too much weight, and I need protein.
Mm-hmm.
And so protein, of course, builds the cells in the body and so on. And I had an accident with my car, and I got stupidly put it into reverse, thinking I was putting it in neutral while I was outside the car. I don't know where my head was at, and I got
Mm.
dragged down
Ah,
my pathway by my car, and it was black and blue,
all right. Well, you're goddamn
and
lucky you weren't run over, love.
yeah, well, I had, it was like a deja vu
Mm,
as it was happening, and that this had happened to me before, and I knew it hadn't. But I
mm.
knew from the happened before, I got to roll away and get out of the way of the car. Somehow I did. I did get knocked unconscious. I did have an out of body watching the car
You're
bugger
right.
down across the
Yeah.
road and bang into my neighbor's wall. And then I picked myself up and went in the house and told my friend I had an accident. I was dripping blood. I had a stitch in my head, and I'd ripped the skin off my left foot, which I'm still dealing with.
Mm.
But the main thing is, it gave me an understanding that I needed to go through the bereavement and the
Yes.
loss of my husband, because I wasn't bereaved,
Right.
because I knew he was in the oneness. And by
That's
the
yes.
way, I know now that he died of the coronavirus long
Mm.
before anybody knew what it was, because it
Ah,
was here in September,
yes.
and he was in there with a broken arm, came out, was dizzy, went back in with dry pneumonia, came out again, was dizzy again, fell over, broke the other
Oh,
arm, went in again, and then everything collapsed on him, and he was gone quickly just before Christmas.
oh, I'm so sorry.
And Spirit told me, when we were in our 40s, and I was going to my agent in California, and she had just lost her husband. And as I walked in, it was just before Christmas, I heard them say to me, "One day this will happen to you." And my husband had 15 years of heart surgery,
Mm,
deterioration as a result of drugs in the liver, pancreas, and spleen. And there I am constantly healing him. I won't
mm,
bore you with the many, many, many things that went wrong. But when I did do my separation from him after his death, there wasn't one part of my body that wasn't empathetic to everything I treated him with.
mm.
And here I want to say, we are all empathetic. And when
Yes.
we're healers, it's very easy to absorb all that negativity and identify with that person as you're counseling and then work on them. You have to dump it yourself.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
have to admit, with my husband, I didn't dump it
Right.
because I loved him and I wanted to keep him alive and keep
Yeah.
him happy and so on. So here I was, and there wasn't one part of my body, inwardly or outwardly, that I hadn't kept of his suffering.
Mm,
And so I've been dumping that.
right.
Yeah. And I'm doing good, and I'm finding me and I'm getting stronger. But that accident with my car was because I was having all of that come out in me. And I
Yes.
wasn't thinking straight.
No, no, and naturally so, because it's obviously it's still so new to you as well, and knowing what you know. And the trouble is that one part of it is they're okay. They're gone, they're fine. They're partying, they're okay. It's who is left behind, that the sorrow is at. And I'm one of these people that when somebody loses someone, they call me because I'm that calmness, that equilibrium, to help them through whatever they need to go through the process of burying and going through it. Um, I didn't cry at my mom's death. I didn't cry at my dad's death because it was, they're okay, but what do we do now?
Mm.
Right? And so
Yeah.
I find it very hard. I can cry at a commercial or an injustice against anyone else, but when it happens to me, it's because I know rationally
Mm.
how to deal with it. So I don't know if I keep that in or it's just the way that I deal with it. Maybe when I cry at commercials, that's where it's coming out.
Yeah. Well, likewise, my mother died. And my father said, "Don't stay for the funeral. Go to Japan," because I had
Mm.
6 weeks planned and I had to leave. And then when I was in Japan 10 years later, my father passed at 100. Got a letter
Uh,
from the Queen.
wow, wow.
Yeah. I was in Japan and I was in the middle of the courses and teaching.
Right.
So by the time I got back to England and waited on the funeral and the settlements and all the things that happened, 2 years passed.
Mm.
But he was visiting me all the
Yes.
time, and I was freezing cold because he's coming in his higher self. And I had to say to him in the end, "Please, let me be for a while."
Right, yes. I'm
Because
getting
he was like,
frostbite.
yeah, because he'd been looking at my whole life, and
Mm,
even though he'd been my student, through the
mm,
years, he still and read all my books. He didn't really fully understand where I was coming from,
right.
and now he does.
Yes.
So that was a unity I needed with him
Hmm.
because as a child it was the opposite.
Yeah.
He was violently aggressive, post-traumatic stress disorder, like
Yeah.
so many men, and so I was much abused by him in that sense, hit and whatever. And yet by the time I was in my 40s, we were so close,
Hmm.
but we never discussed. Even though he did say to me in his 70s once, "I apologize for the way I treated you as a child."
Mm.
But I had to say to him then in those days, but I needed that. I needed to know how it was to be hit.
Yes.
Because there's people out there who are hit all the time.
And how can
I
you
needed to
empathize
know
with them? Yeah.
how I was punished so many
Yeah.
times in so many different ways, not just by him, but others,
Mm.
in order I know how they felt when they were being punished. So my upbringing and everything I've been through is psychology and psychiatry in
Hmm.
action.
Yes.
Even though I read all the books and textbooks and everything I was supposed to read, you know, it was my personal hands-on
Yeah.
experiences of being badly treated in 1,001 different ways
Yeah.
that prepared me to know how to counsel and heal people, throughout my life.
I always say the best teachers are those that have gone through it.
Mm.
Absolutely. My dad died at 45. In fact, actually, June 9th would have been his 100th birthday, but he died
Ah.
55 years too soon. And I know it was for post-traumatic stress from the war.
Mm-hmm.
He was a fighter pilot, squadron leader, night piloting, coming in with flames, in his plane, and all of his squadron one by one dying, and he was the last one at 45. And he was also working with his brother, whom he couldn't stand, at the family business. And they were meant to pack up before I was born and come to Canada, here to Vancouver, where I'm living on the island. Vancouver's just over there. And a week beforehand, he backed out. And he was a racing car driver, a yachtsman, a fighter pilot, and he could get in there amongst the thick of it. But when it came to dealing with his own decisions over his own life, he was timid or weak or scared. And we didn't know about post-traumatic stress back then, and I think that it caused a lot of damage to a lot of them without understanding why. Do many shows on post-traumatic stress, and it's not just our veterans or our soldiers, it's anybody that's been through any form of abuse. And it's how to manage that and deal with it, because if you don't, it's going to deal with you. So we also got to remember our parents brought us up in a way that they were brought up. There wasn't a guideline for them. My mum said to me, you brought your kids up the way you wanted to be brought up. And I said, yeah, definitely. More liberation, more freedom, more ability to talk, more ability to decide for themselves, right or wrong, but make their own decisions, and that I think is important. It's interesting when we look at our lives, when you talk about you needed to know the pain, you needed to know all of that. It does make you a better teacher because you can empathize, you understand. But it doesn't mean, you have to go through every single thing in life to be able to relate to someone. Is that you know enough to be able to relate to them and help them on their path. Other than the spirits that have been with you through your life, always guiding, nurturing, and helping you through things, have you had any human people that have been there for you other than your husbands, who obviously sounded very nurturing as well, that you could turn to when you needed, just to have that conversation that was a little bizarre, that most people wouldn't understand?
Yes. What happened for me, generally in England, I'll go back there first, was friends became entwined with my life. For example, an unmarried mother moved into my house. We rented a room to her. And as a result of her being in my life, I made it possible for her to keep that child, as my first husband left. And so she lived with me, and we together, me working and her staying home looking after my children as well as hers. This kind of thing I had. And another friend later, when my children were older, enabled me to come for 3 months to America, which got me here eventually and meet my husband. I had second husband. And so, I had women who had needs and I had needs, and we entwined. And so they were good friends and good supporters, as I was to them. And then when I came to this country, one of my friends I still have today came to me for a reading, and in fact she just went home because she couldn't get home because of the lockdown.
Right.
And we had a lot of time to reminisce and talk and go over the things that we had learned and evolved as time, and we've come together and parted over the years. You know how life is. But I've never had anyone just there for me.
Right.
You know what I mean? For me to cry on their shoulder or do whatever. I mean, even
because you're in, you don't need it. You've
no,
got everything,
I
right?
listen to spirit.
I know. Yeah, but that's what people perceive. You're strong. You don't need any of that.
Yeah.
Right.
I had that actually said to me when my first husband was off trying to get rid of his the new girlfriend and
Mhm.
come back to me, and it was a whole mess I won't talk about. But here I am in a pub waiting for him with a glass of orange, and his friends are there and saying, Margaret, you got to let him go. You're strong. You
Mm,
can manage without him, you know. And it's like just burst into tears, you know,
mm,
because no, I wasn't strong. I was crumbling beneath,
mm,
you know, everything that was going on. But what happened for me was with that period in my life, I had a big garden, lots of fruit trees in England, and I went out down to the bottom of that garden, and there was a tree there, and I was just holding on to it for dear life. And there was Sister Teresa, and she was talking and talking to me for about an hour and a half about perception and how it will change and how,
mhm.
you know, and that embracing love was all encompassing. That's the kind of thing that I got from her and many of the other
Yeah.
spirit guides. So I trusted them beyond any human.
Exactly. Yes, yes, I hear you. I get asked, who are my spirit guides? And for me, I've always, they're in a circle around me. And it's like, I can't call them their names. I don't know who they are. They'll always form a circle around me and just kind of give me what I need when I need it.
Mm,
And even if, when I'm down, um, because I suffer sometimes from the clinical depression, they're there, to bring me back up. But it's they elected to stand around me in a circle, but I don't know their identity of who they are. They just keep it that way, so I don't know. And then, you were talking before about, hundreds of people going through your bedroom that had died. I used to say I worked for death. And people would look at you going, what? Are you an assassin? And I said, no, it's that when people have died and they're on their way, they get sometimes lost in a strand and they're not quite sure where to go.
mm,
And I can't conjure them up. It's just whether if they're on that channel, my channel. And then I can just show them where to go. And my son developed that, although he has not yet completely embraced it because he's still learning and still holding on to some control. It's very much in him, in everything that he does. He just doesn't realize it yet.
mm. Um, I have four sons,
Mm-hmm.
and the oldest is 20 years younger than me, so I'm 78 this month.
Happy
So
birthday.
that makes him 58.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he's always been a willful personality in that he knows what he wants, he does what he wants. And of course, as a young child, he was always running off playing, doing something where he wasn't supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, um, as psychic as he is, and we saw a lot of it in his childhood, he doesn't like to use it too much.
Right.
He uses it instinctively. He's
Yes.
good with the kids when he
Mm.
teaches them judo, or he does disco, and he's good with the people. But when it comes to himself, he doesn't like to look within.
Right.
Whereas I have my second and my fourth children who do.
Mm-hmm.
Now my third son, he was beaten up. And
Mm-hmm.
until that happened, he was a good counselor and his psyche was 100% like me. It was there. He bugged me, just to give you an idea, to come to one of my classes when he was about 9.
Wow.
And I let him come, and they were all doing psychometry, and which is holding something that they don't know who it belongs to and say what they pick up from it. And these adults are like, well, I think he was a woman. Let me see, someone old, and it would come round and everybody would have a say. And it would come to my son and he would sit there and say, this wasn't a woman, this was a man who bought it in a second-hand shop and brought it home and gave it to his wife, who didn't really like it, and she's had it stuck on the shelf forever. And I'm sitting there like, huh?
Yeah.
And he did that with every single item. And I thought to myself, he's too young for this. He's going to get the earthbound. He's going to get all this
Yes.
stuff. And so I closed him down.
Mm.
And he didn't know that.
Right.
And so his psyche went to the back of his consciousness. And then when he got beaten up, it came forward. And suddenly he was a teenager and he was psychic and all over the world. Yeah, I mean, with his mind and nothing happening. And here he is, a married man with 3 kids, you know. And so I had to bring him over here to the States, work with him, realign his 5 bodies, use my crystal therapies and everything else I know, hypnosis and psychology and whatever, and get him to understand his psyche. And the first thing he said to me, "What the hell did you close me down for?"
And you were protecting him because being body snatched, so to speak, is not fun.
Yeah. No.
And I was too open without the protection or really understanding, because there was no one to talk to. I literally was lying blank. But having somebody like you there, if you had left him, and like today, we leave them open. Where are they going? They're going to teach us, because the children are teaching us, as the animal kingdom is teaching us right now.
The parents need to know. I'm very much into teaching the young parents so that when they're young children, I mean young, 2 and 3, because they're starting that young now, well, like I did, the bottom line is they need to know where it's coming from. And some of them, like I did, will come up to you and tell you, "Don't worry about this, it'll turn out fine." And then run away and play, because they're doing what I did. But their parents are sitting there going, "Oh, something's going on, but what exactly is it? I know they're psychic, but I don't know what it is. What do I do? How do I teach it?" Well, I want to teach them. How do you encourage this? How do you expand this? You know yourself. And of course, as I teach the mothers, they start developing very quickly.
Yes, because that permission is there, the channels are open. So on that note, how do people get hold of you? How do they buy your books? And if they just need more knowledge from you, where do they get it?
Well, I do have a page on Amazon. Obviously, I don't have the script of the page in my head. But if you go to Amazon.com and you search my name, Margaret Rogers Van Coops, my books will come up. And one book that I might suggest people like to get is Expanding Images with the Omni Card. The Omni Card is something I drew with Spirit way back in my 30s. And they told me it would be a teaching tool. Well, I had to wait for photocopies to come in before I could use it. So it was back in the, early 90s that it emerged as a tool to use. And I included that in the books so that there's one in the front to look at and there's one at the back to cut out and laminate so you can have it and always work with it. It teaches you all about the psychic ability, what it is, in parts 1 and 2, and then 3 is working with it. Knowing the meanings of symbols and how we interpret, because in one image is 1,001 ideas and thoughts, and so it's helpful. And so far, we're teaching with the not the book, because I didn't have the book then, but with the card in Japan. My students went from, in one day, from you'd say anyone's psychic in the class, and maybe 40 people, and one would kind of go like this and look scared, and by the end of the day, I'd say, "Who's psychic?" and their hands are all up like this, because it's that easy. Once you understand how to listen, watch your images, the rest comes.
Now, we've got some things here where people can email you at Dr. Margaret vc@gmail.com. Is that the correct one?
Yeah, that is actually where I get swamped with people pitching things.
Right.
But if they want a reading or a healing, I like them to go to PROF, Margaret vc@gmail.com. And also I've got Janet Kira Lesson, who's going to partner with me on our website, which is easypeasysolutions.com, where we're going to talk about
.org, actually. Your easy peasy solutions are .org.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry, I'm still not used to that one yet. Where we're going to talk for 6 weeks free on relationships.
Lovely.
And because everybody's so bound up with people in their homes and can't go here and can't go there and so on. So we thought that would be a good thing to help all the people who are stuck at home. But in time, we will be charging something like $29
Mm-hmm.
a session,
Which is nothing.
online,
Yeah.
which is nothing
Right.
because we obviously have got to pay for the programs we
Right.
use and the things.
Yeah.
But we will be talking about fear, pain, anger, and guilt. That's the next step after we've done the relationships, and hopefully that'll get us through the year.
Yes.
And then I have Easy Peasy Solution,
Mm-hmm.
no S on it, .org as well, which is going to be me, where you can get hold of me and get a reading or counseling or have long-term one-on-ones with me in different ways. So we're building that as well.
Okay. And you're
So,
also on iTunes?
oh yes. I don't know the whole thing, but if you go to the radio show, which is webtalkradio.net, / journey into an unknown world, which is hyphenated,
Mm-hmm.
it'll take you to that page, and then you can click on the symbol for YouTube, for your iTunes,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can download. There's about 130 half-hour teaching
Mm-hmm.
talks that I do on my radio show. I don't host.
Right. So there are if you come to our page, selfdiscoverymedia.com, and put in your name, and Margaret Rogers Van Coops, Coops, you'll see everything on her show posting, all of her links and her book and everything else. And they buy the book, all of the books from Amazon, they all come up?
Yes, and they're all ebooks too, and some of them are free right
Mm-hmm.
now. So download them and read for free.
Right.
Also, I do have my YouTube channel. Okay. Again, that's YouTube / user / the whole thing
Yes.
before / just Dr. Margaret.
Right.
And I've got, I don't know, something like 40 or 50 videos. Some are talking about a book, but some of them me teaching. Depends on what people have asked, and they just all go up there. But I'm now thinking, since they're allowing you to do more, that I'll do talks on
Yes.
there on another page where I'll teach something. So
Excellent.
I'm working on that. Yeah.
Well, you're such a mindful of experience, both cosmic and earthly. And so, you're the nugget. So, I call my shows the Orchard of Wisdom, ready for the picking or
That's
clicking,
nice. I like
right?
that.
And so you are a bunch of trees yourself with plenty of clicking on there, that really, for anybody who's at that stage where they know there's something going on, do I have sixth sense? Is this real? Am I going mad? Blah, blah, blah. This is time to dive into your teachings and just listen, read, reach out to you, and take the journey. It is absolutely nothing to be afraid of. Yes, I was earthbound body snatched because I didn't protect myself, because I didn't have the right guidance at that time on how to channel without allowing those in. But when you've got the right knowledge and you open up into your knowingness and you allow that knowledge to come through you, it will guide you wherever you're meant to go, whatever you're meant to do, and you'll always feel you have a friend with you.
Yeah.
That you're
And
never alone.
you might like to let me do your soul structure coding one day, because it's amazing. When you know that, it's like having 2 years of psychology and psychiatry about explaining all who you are and why you are and what you do. And, I do an intake. Obviously, I want to know your parents' names, your grandparents' names on both sides, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Just like, I'm not saying him and her.
Right, yeah.
And anybody else that you can go back as far as you can. But I've had people who have no memories of ancestors, like their mother up and heaved and went off somewhere else and never told them anything, and I still can get it and download things about their ancestors. And it's so amazing how it explains ourselves to ourselves.
Yes.
I love it. I'm so glad I got mine when I was very young.
Yes, it's been your guidance along the way. How many lifetimes do you think you've lived? Do you have a memory going way back?
I have too many.
Mm.
But in my book, I did something. It was so hard. I can't tell you how hard it was to admit the one life I do know for sure that I actually lived was one of the disciples. I'm not saying any more than
You see, they've got to read the book to know more.
no, because there's so much founded in Christian faith
Yeah.
on what was said and done, and I've been fortunate to be taken back and given that life.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that I had to be reprogrammed as Margaret again because I
Mm.
lost me,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that was
I'll identify with that. Yes.
yeah, it was incredible. And the memories that I have of those years are not, for example, the philosophy and theology that were learning from Jesus and John
Mm-hmm.
and different people, but of simple things like I got to get my head lower than my rabbi, and I can't eat that fish because it fell on the dirt, so I have to give it to my chickens, and I need to dry it first before I give. And it's like, how the hell why did I give fish to chickens? We would never think of that.
Right.
But that
Right.
was apparently normal because of the calcium in the bone,
Yes.
the chicken bones, and that's what they were giving. And I got more about it. But that's the kind, stuff that when you go back and you really
Mm.
do see a past life, because the oneness takes you into the Akashic records to show you the stuff you see is incredibly new or old,
Yeah.
and oh yes,
Yeah.
and so on. So um, the philosophy and theology that came as a result of being taken back to who I was in that time was all part of my death scenario and return and so on. And I did write about it in my journey into the oneness. So,
Mm.
some people are going to say bullshit, and sorry, but
It's
that's
not
the
for
word.
them. It's not for
But
them.
it's not
It's
for
like
them.
these shows aren't for them. These
Right.
shows are for the people who want to know, that are opening up,
Mm,
that are inquiring.
yeah. Yeah.
People say to me, how many people listen to your shows? And I say, all those who are needing to listen.
Exactly. And also, in vein of that, all those who want to listen are also aware that they've had past lives,
Mm-hmm.
and they need confirmations of that
Yes.
too. Whereas the people who aren't into this yet, they're not going to listen anyway.
No,
So,
no, no. So I don't worry about the audience. The audience are the people that are wanting to hear, they're
mm,
wanting to learn, wanting to reply. So I just make sure the orchard is nice and plump, full of all that wonderful knowledge and wisdom, ready for people's clicking. And that's all I'm
mm,
here to do. Um, but yes, some of the past lives I've had, they've come to me at different times in my life in memory, or at different times of cleansing, cellular cleansing, etc. And it's been very, very interesting. But this was definitely my lifetime to awaken back into my purpose, because it had been lost for quite a while. And so
mm,
it's very interesting when you just allow, go with the flow, right? One step in front
mhm.
of the other, and do what they want me to do instead of
But
fighting.
some of the lives that they show us are their lives too, spirit
Yes,
guides' lives,
yes,
and
yes.
they entwine with our lives.
Yeah.
So
Yes. And it's
it's
drawing the line. Was
complicated.
that you? No, no, that was me. No, was that you?
Yeah, yeah.
And we become a hodgepodge of DNA memories. Yeah.
That's the oneness.
Yes, exactly. And that's, a lot of the things where people get misconstrued of oneness. They think it means giving themselves up and losing their identity. And I like, in the simple terms, to look at all the cellular structure in our body. Every single cell has a job to do. Every single cell is important. One cell breaks down, it breaks down other cells. So consider ourselves an important cell in the cellular structure of the oneness.
Right, very wonderfully said. One of the things that we wrote in the first book was each is a fragment. You're a fragment,
Mm,
I'm a fragment, and I'm actually writing that in the light side. Where I'm coming from is I'm the dark side is showing our psychological, emotional
mhm,
status in trying to aspire to climb an
mhm,
ascension. The light side is coming from I am
mhm.
down
Yeah.
to us. So it's kind of interesting.
Mm.
in the way that I'm channeling this. And I'm hoping that the pair will sail together somehow eventually so that people get the full picture about the fragmentation of the soul. The original soul that is like one cell
Yes,
and
yes.
divided and divided and divided. And so we are billions now on Earth, but in terms of all of the cosmos and anything we don't even understand, it's trillions of billions.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And it's
Um,
like our cells in our body. You can't say how many there are.
no,
No.
no, there's no counting method. It's just trusting there are. Yeah. For me, at times of trouble or too much, I just like to travel off into different dimensions or up into the universe where, it is everything and nothing. It is total peace because you're out of body. So, what is your escape into peace?
um, I don't know that I've got to be honest and say I long stopped escaping.
All right, right. When you've
you
got a
know,
good team around you, yes.
so I lose myself in watching TV.
Hmm. Yes, yes.
I like to sing.
Hmm.
I haven't done much of that in the last 2 years because of my husband being ill and stuff. In fact, he bought me a karaoke thing pedestal, and it's still standing there. I haven't used it. Um, I just like being creative. I'll color, paint, draw something. I knit healing blankets. I crochet these
Mm,
ginormous healing
beautiful.
blankets. And sometimes people ask me to make them for them and pay for the yarn. And sometimes I just go to, secondhand stores and buy a bunch of yarn and
Hmm.
have no idea who it's going to be for and start making one. And
Right.
along comes someone. The creative side of me has always been there. I love drama. I've been an actress. I've been
Hmm.
a model. Whatever I wanted to do, I just did it, and
Right. The
it
creative thing, right? Yeah.
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 And any which way I do, there's always some spiritual work somewhere involved in
Yes.
it, and so I
Yes.
enjoy it. It's a voyage of discovery into the
Hmm.
unknown for me, and I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I think one of the first things I tell people is get out of your head because that's always full of buts and you want to sit on your butt.
Mm.
It's about the allowing, the exploration. Don't look at the unknown so fearfully. Look at
I
the
have one
unknown as
block.
wondrous. One block?
Yeah, computers.
Yeah. And that funny for me with my dyslexia is what started giving me my freedom because it could
I
correct.
can't remember which is which and what I have to push. I mean, if I was doing it like typing every day,
Hmm.
it's automatic. But when you have to calculate and like this funneling thing, when we get this show on the road, we're not charging, so we don't have to worry.
Right.
But when the time comes and they have to pay us $29, and in return, I'll send them a workbook or something. Uh,
There are programs for that, darling, that can
I
be set
know.
up that are easy to do. So
Yeah.
I hire people to do the background stuff for me, and otherwise, everything else I've learned to do myself. And I've actually look at the creativeness of it and kind of really enjoy it. So in
Mm,
every show, and every posting, and everything that goes out there is, that respect for the person that I've interviewed. As people say, do you interview celebrities? And I say, everybody I interview
mm,
is a celebrity because I celebrate their journey and what
mm,
they're doing. And
mm.
so, thank you for coming and sharing your story with us because for a lot of people, it is a little still far out there. For other people, it is permission. For a lot of people, it is, oh, that's what the feeling is. Or
Mm,
I can do that. I didn't know what that was. So how can I manage it in a way that I'm not going down the dark side, that, I'm not going to be earthbounded. So we all need uh, guardians along the way, people who know that show us we're not walking it for you, we're not telling you how to walk it, we're just preparing you for the journey.
mm,
So and you're prepared for that walk, but you've got to have the wonderment inside of you. If you don't, everything is going to be scary.
mm. Well, quite honestly, scary is also part of the awakening
Hmm.
of knowing because you need to be scared in order to understand in the future when you are not scared
You're right.
to help the people who are
You're
scared.
right. Yes, yes. I was afraid once, and this is what I did. Yeah, yeah. And that's why we go for all those emotions and all those
Yeah,
things. And
yeah.
I think also, I'm sure with you, with me growing up, why don't you just settle down and do one thing? And I dabble in this and did that and did this, and it's every single experience I did was something that became a part of me, that
Mm,
that then it's one of those ingredients that you use in your dish of life. And
mm,
so it's, don't be afraid to explore, don't be afraid to walk away from something and go and try something utterly new, because that's what's it's walking into your purpose. And when you discover that purpose, you understand
mm.
why you're
Yeah.
here and what the purpose is of you being here, right? Because everybody has a purpose.
Yes, and the purpose could be just to be an idiot, so that
Yes, the
everybody
village idiot. Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
around you gets to learn by you being an idiot.
Yes, yes. Well, I say, if we look at ourselves as a village, every single person in the village has an importance in the strength and the support of that village.
Mm,
One person breaks down, everybody breaks down. But the village idiot has just as big an importance as everyone else. And that's, one of the things I think we need to take out of our vocabulary is judgment and ridicule,
mm-hmm,
because, that pointing of the thing of the three pointing back at you,
mm-hmm.
and if we can get out of that phase of judgment and ridicule, I think that we will actually understand love a great deal more.
Oh, absolutely. You know, back in 1942, when I was born, judgment was rampant because of the
Right.
wars. World
Yes.
War One, World War Two, the Boer War. I mean, it goes on and on.
Yeah.
And we've had so many since. And when you look at all these situations born out of political strife, people rising up, they meet judgment because
Yes.
people are saying it can't be done, it's not right. Well,
Mm.
this virus, coming back to that, and I think it's a good way to end here. This virus is saying to everybody, stay home, think about your life, think about the creativity of your inspiration to bring forward new ideas on ways to live your life in your house and then to share it outside of your house so that others learn it, so that in communal ways you will all come together and come up with new ways to live, and out of that, new rules. Rules are there to be broken, remember, so they're temporary,
Yes.
but they're a step in
Guidance,
the right
guidances.
guidance
Mm.
into the right direction so that we can rebuild this world literally. Okay, we don't need skyscrapers
Nope.
that go to this. Why? What? Let's have them all fall down. we need we need to learn to live. I saw a vision of Mars years ago before it was destroyed, and they lived. They had these ravines, and they lived in these sort of this towards the end of the world there. Uh, Bridge like structure where everybody lived in different layers
Mm-hmm.
and worked and shopped and so on. And we need to learn to use the land and to work with the
Right.
land and to make the buildings fit into the land, not build on top of it and reach the sky. I've known that ever. The very first skyscraper I ever saw in England, it was like, that's going to come down. And I
Mm.
knew the two towers would come down in '85 when I was up there. I
Right.
wrote about that.
Yeah.
So you see, we need to, things to happen. And as much as it's horrible, there's going to be that big wave. There's going to be that flood. There's going to be a change of the ocean. There's going to be a change of the land. We can't stop that. That's Mother Nature, and it will happen.
Well,
And
Mama Nature is saying this is a warning.
mm-hmm.
See how we can survive without you. Next time I press the delete button. So I think if, and I interview an awful lot of people who are teaching other people to put people and planet before profit, not the other way, because we misconstrued it and we put profit at the expense of people and planet. And
Mm-hmm.
now that awakening that we've got going on and that shaking and that stepping up is about, if you cannot respect the planet, if you cannot respect the people on it, if you cannot contribute to it, what are you doing here? So it's a time
Yeah.
to ask ourselves that. What
Yeah.
am I doing here to benefit the lives of others?
But you also have to remember we must have controversy, because
Mm,
controversy is
is the yin yang.
friction,
Yeah,
and friction allows growth.
right.
So it's not going to be easy.
No.
The next, according to what I'm writing in the book, 200 years of controversy.
Oh no, I thought it was
Yes.
meant to be peace now. We've had enough
No,
years of controversy.
no, you see, we were in the Piscean and the Aquarian overlap. Now we're actually from 2008, we actually stepped into the Aquarian age, and it's going to take about 200 years for us to understand that Aquarian is about future, the energy is about communications
Mm-hmm.
with the archangels. So we are now learning to listen again and find new rules and new ways and follow the laws of karma. So, it's a big step for us as a species.
Yes, yes. I can see how when you look at certain species, it will take 200 years, but hopefully it won't be 200 years before it happens, but 200 years before you could say everyone's doing it.
Well, if you look at 1800s to
Mm,
1900s, they went from candlelight and
mm,
whatever to electricity. Okay, and then we look from 1900s to 20. What we've got is electricity to these computers and stuff.
right,
So
yes.
we can do a lot in 100 years.
Oh,
So
yes.
imagine what they're
Well,
going to do
we
in
can
200
actually
years.
go back to this like Tesla and the pyramids. 1,000 pyramids around this world, and
Yeah.
they're put there to accept energy from the universe to power the world. And
Mm.
so, we're now waking up that there are other ways uh, to provide power to
The
us that
next,
aren't
yeah,
abusive to the planet.
the next big way of heating, lighting, and everything is sound. That's
Yes,
what they're going to use is sound.
yes. Just did a wonderful show on sound healing, and that was
Yeah,
lovely. Yeah,
but imagine your house is oscillating at a certain
yeah,
vibration that keeps it constant at a certain heat.
yes, yes. And of course, what is it? Is the 528 or the 524 love vibration? So, the more we get up into that higher vibration, the less we are wanting to be violent towards one another.
Mm, yeah, there's a lot of changes to
Yeah,
come.
there are. And it's exciting. And of course, I have the pleasure of bringing people like yourself on, sharing, all that you know and all that you do. And I thank you on behalf of everyone that you've benefited out there and that you are still to benefit, and ask people, just awaken to the possibility, and just step out of the fear or the unknowingness, and just say, I'm willing to know, and
Mm,
just reach out to Margaret, and just explore, explore her YouTube, explore her iTunes, read her books, and you'll get that whole signature of who she is and what she's telling you. And then when you reach out to her, then you actually have a comprehension of how you two can mix together so that you can fly off and do your own thing. So um, you're an angel on earth that we needed. You know?
Well, thank you. I just feel like anybody else, a human being that's doing my thing.
Yes, but to other people, especially people like me who understand what you're doing, it takes bravado. Because I know that you would have been, persecuted and judged and everything else through your life.
Mm,
And I know in my past lives, I literally burnt at the stake and everything else for it. So I know the courage that it takes, and the fact that you've done this since, a wee child and followed this path,
mm, mm,
kudos to you, because a lot of people, just through the results, the reactions they get from other people, shut down.
mm.
And I'm glad that you haven't, and you've kept your light going, and it's there for everybody else who's ready to see.
Well, thank you so much for complimenting me. A bit embarrassed.
Nonsense! Nonsense! Own it, baby, own it!
But you're pretty damn good yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's
Everything
very
you
easy when I
said,
get people like you. Very
well,
easy.
everything you said, very wise. Thank you very much.
See, knowingness, just channeled. Open the mouth, let it come out. Trust it. That's
Yeah,
what it's about.
yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And to everyone else out there, please open your heart, open up your chakras, open up your mind, open up your soul, and allow that light to come in, and let Margaret show you the way. Because I promise you, once you take that journey and you come through to the other side, you're going to be home. and you're going to know who you are, why you are, and what you're here to do. And it's going to come from a heart and a soul and a presence that is wondrous to us all. So until next time, bye for now. We hope you enjoyed the show. We look forward to bringing you more shows. Please go to selfdiscoverymedia.com/shows and you will see the incredible lineup of genres and shows that we have for you. We are here to make a difference in your life. Thank you for listening.